Hello and welcome along. Hi, this is Kathy Frey from IMCO, from the International Integrative Maternity Healthcare Organisation, and welcome along to this week's live webinar. And this week I'm very pleased to finally connect with Dr. Laura Brown. Laura, say hello.
Hello, Kathy. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
It's wonderful to have you here. The topic that you are going to be going into detail on today is so on point. It is so cutting edge. It's a very, very exciting area of increasing awareness and wisdom. But just for those of you who may be watching this webinar a little later, just to give you a bit of an overview about Dr. Brown, and she'll also give more of, to give her own introduction as well. But Laura is a registered naturopathic doctor with a functional medicine approach, and she recognizes, patterns and removing obstacles and stimulating the body's natural mechanisms to repair damage and rebuild health. This is our holistic healthcare model. And Dr. Laura is also a best-selling author of Beyond Digestion, which I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit more about that book. And she's owner of the SOUTHEND Natural Medicine, and is a HeartMath Certified Practitioner, a Level 2 Certified Gluten Free Practitioner, and Laura holds the designation of ADAPT Trained Practitioner from the Kresser Institute, which is the only functional medicine and ancestral health training operation. Now, the topic of today is all around expectant mothers' diets and the health of her microbiome and how that impacts fetal programming for life. And, it's just such a huge topic, and it is incredibly cutting edge. Just a reminder to those of you who are live with us today, always love to hear from you, so don't hesitate to put your any questions into the Q&A or chat, and we'll make sure that those get answered. I remember, Laura, myself, when I was at university studying to become a midwife, and we had in the very last semester of, like, the very last weeks of the very last semester, and there was an opportunity where we had to teach something to the class. So you had to put together your PowerPoint and whatnot, and you were sharing some information. And we're going back a bit, admittedly, but it was at that session where the very first conversation of preconception healthcare came into play. And that was a student teaching the class, and this is the very end of midwifery training. So it is quite a few years ago, but in the big scheme of things, it's not that long ago. And we are, so much of this information about preconception healthcare will have actually been around for hundreds and thousands of years in many other cultures within their indigenous traditional healthcare management, but somehow it's only just entering into modern mainstream allopathic obstetric knowledge. So and of course everything has to be done through research, which is great, so, and on top of that, we now start to have the tools in research to be able to even do some of the research. It's new science. But I know that today's flow is going to be just a little bit of a conversation, and Laura's going to be doing most of the talking. But Laura, do you want to please reintroduce yourself and give us a really good kind of overview on this leading edge, cutting edge topic?
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, sure. The idea of gut health and the microbiome is big for me. I see a lot of that in my practice. I deal a lot with digestive issues, and with that comes a lot of research of my own, looking in on things. And what I found was, that the original concept that our microbiome was sterile when we were, in utero. So when a fetus is in a mummy's tummy, original thought was that their microbiome was sterile until they were born, and they would pick up the lactobacillus through the vaginal tract, and how important that was. Yes. And, if there was a C-section, now we're looking at, can we swab vaginally if we don't have, the group B strep, but, can we swab? Can we inoculate the baby somehow so that it gets some of this mother's microbiome because it's sterile? That was the original thought. And lo and behold, what they found in the last few years is that it's not at all sterile. That, it's actually, the microbiome is being passed through the umbilical cord. Yes, it continues to develop post-birth, of course. And yes, the vaginal tract is super important and critical, of course. And so is the colostrum and the mother's milk to help, seed down and get things started. And then the breast milk, how it changes, is just like a magnificent gift of life, to help that child develop and grow in a healthy format. But what we're finding more and more is the importance of the health of the mother. And we know that, the baby always comes first. And if the baby needs some kind of vitamin, it's going to get it from the mom. And if the mom's not getting it from their diet day to day, it's going to come from her tissues. It's going to come from her bones, right? And she's going to be the one that ends up depleted, because this is the cycle of life. This is how we're trying to protect our species, is, putting the priority to the offspring.
Absolutely.
So we know all this, and, we've done the whole thing with the prenatal vitamins that, we should be on them. Really the idea is for any fertile female in her years of, capacity to bear children, to have that prenatal vitamin would be essential, to make sure she's getting enough of the B vitamins and the folate and the iron and all of that good stuff that we need in order to help build a healthy body, in order to carry a baby and provide for a baby or multiple babies. Well, what we're finding more and more on the microbiome side of it, and knowing now that, this baby is getting some of the mama's microbiome, what does the mama's microbiome look like? And how is that impacting the offspring? So that includes like diet, because diet impacts, and they're finding, first of all, sugar, and the sugar intake is incredibly an issue. Really, I think sugar, from what I can see, like maybe a teaspoon a day, it's kind of like salt, right? You can be up to 5 grams a day, and okay, right? That's a teaspoon of honey or a teaspoon of maple syrup. But not the crazy amounts of stuff like some of the prepackaged drinks and beverages, 25 grams just there. Or, you're looking at sometimes people having multiple teaspoons of sugar in something. Birthday cakes were at one point just very, very, very occasional. Maybe in a family of 4, you get 4 times a year. Whereas now it seems to be, the local food shops that you're picking up the fast food from, all of the baked goods and the extra processed foods and the carbohydrates, high in sugar, high in saturated fats, bad fats, and the salts, just too much of all of those things. It's way out of balance, and it's impacting the microbiome. And we're seeing that come through and forward with inflammation and inflammatory factors. We're seeing that with predisposition to more of the diabetes type 2, high blood pressure, obesity, all of these things in the mother. And we're thinking, okay, well, the mother's health's not that great. Well, maybe the child will have some hope. Well, we're finding that it's not just lifestyle and the mother training the child in her habits, that these things are seeded in the microbiome of the baby in utero. And the mother's diet and the mother's microbiome has the potential, right, or good or bad, to affect that child for life. And we're seeing more and more babies being born and young children with that predisposition to metabolic disease, the high blood pressure, the obesity, the predisposition to diabetes, all of these things, which is, I find, just really sad. I just posted on LinkedIn today, I saw an article in Medscape on
they're talking about giving Ozempic or, the GLP, the semi-glutenide drug, the diabetes drug that's helping people lose weight. And they're giving this to teens. And I'm thinking, goodness gracious, they're giving it to teens, likely without addressing what is their diet like, what is their exercise like, and why are they where they are? Is it from predispositions? Okay, if it is, then we're gonna have to work extra hard in their diet and lifestyle. But at least then we're not looking at a drug for life that isn't correcting the root cause of what's going on. Whereas we come back and have food as our medicine. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, which of course it tends to be the
I'm not hearing you at all, Kathy.
Sorry? Can you hear me all right? Oh, can you not hear me?
I'm still not hearing you.
Oh, okay. Your microphone sound changed a little bit before. I'm not sure. Okay.
Oh, there we go. I hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Okay. You could hear me fine before?
Yes.
Okay.
All good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's very interesting, when you make that comment about women, when in preconception, but especially when they are pregnant, that the baby will just take from them whatever they need, and it's a woman that ends up depleted. And I think that a lot of times women don't completely understand that probably the biggest reason that they're taking a multi during pregnancy is to make sure that they have enough on board, because the baby will steal from them. And when you have been pregnant for 9 months and then you've exclusively breastfed for 6 months, and you look at this chunky 6-month-old baby and you think that every single molecule in that child has come from your body. It's huge, right?
It's such a miracle.
Yeah, and like every single thing has come from me, and that's all got to come through your own nutrition. So yes, we can definitely have mothers who are depleted in certain micronutrition, minerals, vitamins, etc., that will affect the baby, because she's so depleted, even the baby's not going to get enough because there's not enough even within her tissues. But we don't want even that to be the situation, do we? We want that woman to have so much on board of everything that her body needs, that there's just loads and loads for that baby. But do you want to just go into a little bit of an explanation, Laura, a bit more background on you and where your story as well, and just how you ended up in this field, because it is so cutting edge.
So I became a naturopathic doctor as my second career, and initially I was in technology and business, and I had a lot of issues myself with digestion. I had since I was probably a teen, and ultimately, trying to figure things out, that my health prevailed through learning through my naturopathic studies, and then helping people learn kind of what I've learned. And I'm always passionate and always have been passionate about how we're knit together, and, how to support things to the ultimate function. Keeping in mind that there's no perfection at all. So that, it's a passion of mine to learn how the body works, learn how we detox, learn how we support ourselves, and learn how the digestion works. And the microbiome is a big part of it. Our gut is one of our huge detox organs, and it definitely needs to be supported. I mean, 99% of the genes that we carry around in us are not us. They're our microbiome. And we're learning more and more.
It's a pretty impressive statistic, isn't it?
It is. It's pretty crazy. And I was gathering so much information with helping my patients in my clinic and learning about things that were interesting for myself, that I put together a book. called Beyond Digestion, How Gut Health Connects to Your Mind, Your Body, and Your Soul. And that was published in February 2021. And it's selling internationally on Amazon. So you can go on any Amazon platform and grab it. A lot of bookstores and that major chains of bookstores are carrying it now as well. And if you don't see it, you can always ask for it if you prefer to buy it through your local place. So it is, available worldwide. And out of that, I've done a lot of podcasts like this talking about it, just very adamant and passionate about our health and taking care of things, naturally, as you had mentioned when you were introducing me so kindly. Like I love to recognize patterns and then remove the obstacles that are in the way to our path to healing. So really just helping people feel free and clear and easy in their life. And I feel really positive about, the wonderful, healthful choices that they make for their own best good. And that is what I love to see, is that inspiration happen for people in their own lives and to take hold of their own health. Because, really, food is a big part of our medicine. Plant medicines are huge in naturopathic medicine. We use plant medicines. You can see the tinctures behind me. Those are, as close to the plants, as eating them, right? We're taking the constituents, we're taking out what would extract from alcohol. Teas are what would extract out from water. Different constituents come out, but plants are beautiful, and there's so much to be offered through that. So the natural medicines are really key. And then the vitamins and the minerals, of course, we'll get them out of the plants, but then we also, have them in pill form and stuff as well. So it's recognizing. So it's just, figuring out what the body might be deficient in. Sometimes we have genetic hiccups that we have to, help iron out a little bit. And, supporting the body. The body is so wise, and it knows, it already, it knows what it needs, and we just have to listen to it. So helping people really learn and tune into what their bodies need, and providing that either through food or through supplements, or sometimes through the medicines. So this is my passion, and this is what I do in many different ways.
So fantastic. We were chatting a little bit just before we got going live today that, you would see it as a naturopath, particularly with specializing in maternity. And, I see it as a midwife, and I know that a lot of our clinicians here on board would, and that we get obviously such a broad spectrum of women's mindsets as to where they're at in their pregnancy and how they view the importance of this topic, of their gut health and how that impacts their baby. And sometimes we 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. So for those women, often there can be a lot of fear and worries and anxiety around the fact that they've discovered that they're pregnant. So sort of like the last thing they're thinking about is, what am I eating sometimes? Especially when the baby is first trimester, it's a tiny little thing inside them. So you've got that going on. You've got sort of, should we say, the average run-of-the-mill couples where there's no particular concerns, and then it might come down to really their personality of sort of how anal or not anal or holistic or not particularly holistic kind of thinking they are. And then we've got perhaps that sort of, we sort of say 30% or so, maybe 1 in 3 who is actually really onto it. And, maybe they come from a background where they've had other health issues that they've dealt with. And, they're really focusing, and they want to know, and they want to do the best thing by their baby. And quite often, those women are actually part of couples who have invested in preconception healthcare. They've engaged down that track. They know they want the healthiest possible sperm and the healthiest possible egg and the optimal womb lining, and they've really got in there. And it is such a big, broad spectrum that we're dealing with, isn't it, all the time? so sometimes you would be in that situation where you're able to go into a lot of detail for that, and a lot of customized regime back for that woman, because she's really, her ears are wide open, she's a sponge, she's soaking it all in, she wants to know it all. And then you'll be in other situations where you need to give them just the simplest thing to do, the most straightforward, uncomplicated, because then they'll say, look, that's enough for me, that's all I want to know. And it's tricky, right? That you sort of, but I guess most of the time when clients are coming to see you, they're already self-filtered, they're filtered through the system. That you're seeing the ones that are a little more committed, I guess, to having that healthy regime diet and whatnot. But if you were to simplify things down as much as possible for those women who are not interested in engaging deeply on the topic, or can't afford to go and see, a particular specialist naturopath, if we were going to give them the most simplest things of the do's and the don'ts, would you be able to sort of go through your dot point list on that?
Yeah, so first of all, Kathy, my specialty is naturopathic medicine, and I work a lot with gut health. So I see people more than just maternal people. So I just wanted to make sure that people didn't get the wrong impression. So, when you're talking to folks, at any range of interest, really it's helping people understand that food is medicine. And if food isn't fresh and vibrant and healthy, then neither will you be, neither will your baby be. And we need whole foods, right? It's not about eating more for the baby, it's eating more nutritious for the baby. And we want nutrient dense food. We want nutrient dense food. So that means your fresh vegetables, your fresh fruits, healthy meats and fishes and poultry, and healthy fats, more omega-3s and nuts and seeds and avocados and some coconut oil. And our fish oils are so important. And if we're not getting it from our foods, then we might have to supplement, less industrial seed oils. And then, carbohydrates, yes, but carbohydrates should be coming from our nuts and seeds, our hummus, our, lentils and beans and pulses, our fruits. And then our starchy veg, right? Like sweet potatoes, baked potatoes, squashes, those types of things. And then occasionally a little bit from, whole grains if you're able to digest them, and some quinoa and some brown rice and things like that. I deal a lot with people with gluten sensitivities. So I'm always looking for, gluten-free or grain-free alternatives. So that comes into play a lot. So it's really just coming down to focusing in as food as medicine. And it's not just for the females, it's for the males too. We know that sperm production is down over 50% since the 1950s. And this has to do for many, many different reasons. Some of it's the insecticides and pesticides that have been sprayed on crops and things like that. But it's also the prevalence of the xenoestrogens in our environment. And those are chemicals that act as estrogens in our body, but body really doesn't know how to break them down. And it's not really estrogen, but it starts to mimic it and wreaks havoc on the hormonal balance in males and females. So this is causing issues as well. So we want to make sure we're doing things to help clear and detoxify, and the liver is really key there. So we look at our cabbage-based family vegetables for that to help the liver clear. Cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, collard greens, those kinds of things. So food really, if we look at it, can be our medicine. And you might think, oh, some people think that's so expensive. How do I? And it's like, what? It's a lot more expensive to be sick later on. And you can eat healthfully, on a budget. You can go to the local markets. You can shop in the seasonal aspects. You can prepare and freeze for later, or you can buy from your local grocery store's freezer section that they've been they have vegetables that have been froze at the peak of freshness that have been, bought locally, that type of thing. So there's ways to think about it, around it. And then as far as timing, it's a matter of food prep and choices and prioritizing, instead of just, grabbing the quick thing on the run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just altogether such a fascinating topic. And what about you're talking about some of the newer research that has been out there. So what are the sort of things that, I guess, what are the improvements that we now know that we can do? What are the impacting the microbiome for the baby and then their life? Is there particular thing? I mean, or is it really, it just all comes down to that food?
But we know that, the microbiome is impacted by stress. That's huge. It's impacted by medications. It's impacted by the plastics in our environment and the things we put on our skin. So our household cleaning products and cosmetics. We know that, the microbiome is affected by, what we eat and when we eat and where we eat. That's all very important. So, we're continually, maybe putting more probiotics down there. Maybe we're adding some fiber in our diet so that we can make sure that our bacteria is well fed, because it needs that. So that side of it is important.
When you were talking about the male sperm count being down, for those of you who may be watching this video but haven't perhaps seen some of our previous videos around subfertility, as a general overview, when there are subfertility issues going on with a couple, typically around about 40% of the issue is sperm related. Around 40% of the issue is female body related. Around 10% of the issue is both. And around 10% is unknown. So that's a very broad summary. But, what that means that, 50% of the time when there's subfertility issues, it's sperm related. And there's certainly, we do see a lot of times where when a woman becomes pregnant, if she goes on to miscarry, she seems to think that it's all about her, that it's her body letting her down, and like he's done his bit and now it's all up to her. And it's not. We know now that poor quality sperm can cause miscarriages. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? Yeah, poor quality sperm can impact whether an egg fertilizes or not, but poor quality sperm also can cause recurrent miscarriages. We know that sperm is directly involved with a pregnancy developing preeclamptic toxemia. We don't fully understand exactly how it's involved, but we know it's involved. That's conclusive, which is why sometimes a woman can say, for example, have 3 pregnancies without preeclamptic toxemia. She has a new partner, she's got a 4th pregnancy, and she gets it for the first time. Why the heck have I got this? Well, that's because you've got a new partner and it's his sperm. So it's wonderful to have couples starting to realize the importance of them both having that preconception healthcare. Ideally 3 to 6 months for the male, and ideally 6 to 12 months for the female, for the length of time it takes for our bodies to do what they do, to grow sperm and to produce our eggs. But yeah, it's we have to stop this kind of feeling, which is hard to stop, that once a woman is pregnant, what happens from that point on is all just about her. It's not. It's what did that male partner contribute as well.
So true. So true. That's a really good point to bring up, Kathy. Thank you. Yes.
What's your advice and guidance around gut health supplements during, leading up to, while during preconception healthcare and during pregnancy and during lactation. I mean, a lot of times, women will feel like, oh, they should be doing something, but exactly what should I be doing? Beyond just having a great diet, but as far as, because there's so many different interesting yogurts, and then there's, different little drinks that you can have, and then there's capsules, and, how do you what's your thoughts on the best way to look after your gut health on supplements?
Yeah, so I mean, it's individual. I mean, it always is when you're talking to naturopathic doctors, because we practice individualized medicine. But we would consider, what the deficiencies are, what the picture is like for the mother, and then we may choose one type of probiotic over another. And I think that's kind of what you're referring to. If you're going to choose a probiotic, you would choose one that's, if it's in a capsule, preferably something that's enteric coated. Some people do better with a spore forming based probiotic, with the thought that that is going to help seed down in the gut a little more easily. But I've seen kefirs work exceptionally well. There's some based on milk, and there's some based on coconut milk. So even if you're lactose or milk intolerant, there are alternative kefirs out there that can be very helpful. And there's more and more research being done on specific strains of bacteria for, certain conditions. And we would use that more as a prescriptive medicine in order to help them. And so long as we're doing that within, the realms of nothing too crazy, you're just providing and replenishing bacteria within the gut that would naturally be there, using again more as a food, then I think that can be quite helpful and safe, and through pre-pregnancy and pregnancy and through lactation.
Fantastic. So is there any what other things you might want to be going over, as far, because we have primarily maternity healthcare practitioners, the audience here at IMCO. So there could be midwives, obstetricians, doulas, and other naturopathic clinicians from various different modalities. And then we also will have pregnant women themselves sometimes come onto these webinars. So I guess what would be your main advice that you would be telling other maternity healthcare professionals of what they should be summarizing and saying, explaining to expectant mums of what they should and shouldn't be doing?
Well, I think it's coming back to sugar, and I'm just looking at I pulled a couple of recent abstracts off of PubMed, just kind of seeing, what's the chatter of late. And sugar is a big issue. And we see that we're seeing high consumption of sugar and high consumption of processed foods linked to, we talked about obesity and metabolic diseases in the mother and the offspring. And then I also have another one here that talks about the increase of free sugar in pregnancy, with a corresponding diagnosed asthma, wheezing, hay fever, eczema, atopy, and then just, a lot of hyperallergenic functions and lung function in children aged 7 to 9. So we're seeing like 7 to 9 years later, the impact on these children based on the sugar content of their mother's diet when they were pregnant. So, I mean, this is pretty big and pretty interesting. So that would be an area to take a look at. So yeah, sugar was a big one. Also seeing that in mental disorders leading to the susceptibility of offspring's health to diseases early in life or adulthood, and the proneness to mental disorders when we see that. And the reason behind that is sugar is about 8 times more addictive than cocaine. It rewires the brain and its reward centers so that it's happening in the mother, but it's also happening in the fetus. Okay, so that is something. So these high carbohydrate or sugar, glucose, fructose, or added sugar, these types of things. And it's oftentimes about reading labels. I've had the people with best of interests thinking that they're doing really, really well. And then we do a diet diary, just have them write down what they eat every day and how they're feeling, and then look at that for a week. And then just have an overview of it and really get a sense for, wow, what's in this food that they're eating. And
Yeah, and
are we
also
seeing that?
sometimes do you think just like understanding what's on the back of those labels, when it says the ingredients, I mean, when it says, you can, like it's oversimplifying things, but you could basically say that 5 grams of sugar is like a teaspoon of sugar. So, when it says 25 grams of sugar and it is a serving, well, that's 5 teaspoons of sugar, but then on the front of it, of that label to that food, it often will say something like natural and no added sugar or something, and you're just like, no, it's so deceptive. And looking on the back, and then of course ingredients are listed, from the largest down to the smallest. So, when sugar is sitting in one of those first 2 or 3 or 4 ingredients within the list, I mean, that should just scare you off anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, carbohydrates, can come from, complex sugars. It's the sugars that get us into trouble are ones that have been stripped of fiber and concentrated.
Yeah, the
And
refined sugars. Yeah.
yeah. And it's also the non-caloric sweeteners and this, like the stevias and the monk fruits. These guys are trouble as well. Although they don't spike blood sugar, they affect the gut in so many other different ways. So it's still negatively modifying gut health, even with these sugar alternatives, the sweeteners and the non-caloric sugar alternatives is
I think
still
that
causing issue.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of talk over many years now about the synthetic sweeteners that have come in. But, as you say, things like stevia have been accepted for a while as being a better alternative than maybe sucral or something. So do you want to go into a little bit more explanation for those that haven't heard about, you say, stevia and monkfish and things being an issue? What's going on down the track on that one?
Well, it's altering the gut health, right? So it's changing the microbiome composition, it's causing inflammation, and this is leading to the predisposition for diabetes, the predisposition for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which now rolls into the cycle of cardiovascular disease and metabolic syndromes. So it's still got the same, bad aftertaste, I guess you could say. Even though it tastes sweet up front, it's not so sweet in the end. So that's, it's still altering the microbiome and the gut health and triggering a leaky gut, irritating the lining with the inflammation. And I don't know if you need more detail than that. I can go down rabbit holes on this, Kathy.
Suppose it's like, when you have got somebody who's newly pregnant and look, they've drank their coffee with a teaspoon of sugar for their whole life, and they would just like to have a coffee that tastes a little sweeter. So they might head down that track of the stevia or whatnot, or that they've always sprinkled a little bit of something on their breakfast cereal. They think of themselves as being pretty healthy, and they have a little bit of sugar, but not a lot. So gosh, they'll be thinking, oh, there's just nothing I can do that's right. Everything's bad. So I wonder what you're suggesting to them in those situations.
I mean, everything in moderation, right? And taking that into consideration. But, there's, as I said, there's no one perfect way of doing things, but we just know that eating more healthfully, more vibrant foods, less of the processed refined sugar, right? So if we look for whole fruits that contain the sugars, right? So maybe putting some slices of banana or slices of orange or some other types of fruit, some berries, that offer that touch of sweetness, but now they're already packaged into their beautiful packages with the fiber and the polyphenols and all the other things that are so nutrient dense. So it's offering, you know, some excitement that way. You know, and a little bit of dried fruit. Yes, there's concentrated sugar there, but it's still packed with the fiber. So if we have the dates, or we have the fig, or we have the prunes, and we chop them up into little pieces and use those as you know, part of what we might be doing. Those things are going to offer us some fruits, but you know, we're looking, you know, some sweetness, right? But we're looking at, you know, 1 to 3 servings of fruit a day, not like 10, right? We need some vegetables in that. So it's curbing some of that. And once you start eating like that for a while, you realize that, oh, you know, you eat something sweet after that and you're like, wow, that's like really sweet. And you realize, you know, the difference, and that you don't necessarily need it and you don't crave it anymore. You're craving more of those natural things. But so you're just looking for, you know, whole foods that are packaged as nature had intended and made them, not ones that have been, you know, extracted and stripped and concentrated.
Is there, we will run out of time soon. So is there anything else that you'd like to go over explaining, you know, to do with that fetal microbiome and fetal programming, or anything else that you don't feel that you have quite covered yet today?
I think a lot of it is common sense, Kathy. And as you had talked about early on, you know, conventional science getting caught up with traditional medicine. I think it's just coming back to that mindset. We've known how to make babies for millions of years. I mean, that's why we're still here. And are we getting healthier? Let's ask that question. Are we getting healthier, and why? Why are we not? And those who are, what are they doing? Right. And it, you know, comes down to kind of the blueprint that we were made of, and our fast food environment, you know, wasn't part of that blueprint, and keeping that in mind. But our markets and our fresh farmers markets that are local, our homemade, you know, goods that are, you know, that are healthful and nutrient dense with nuts and seeds and fibers and fruits and vegetables and things like that, can be so much better. Kind of harping on some of that, but it's, as I said, it's just kind of common sense, and we don't need to overthink it. We really don't. It's something
That's
just
probably
to
the
kind of,
strongest message coming through, is don't overthink it. Just get it back to the basics. You know, because as you say, our bodies have hardly changed from cavemen days. So, you know, and our bodies back then were not used to high levels of sugar and rich food and whatnot. Yeah. Look, it's been so great having you here today. Is there anything else that you want to conclude with? And if anybody has any questions, we've had some come through that I've answered. But if anybody has any other queries, just let us know.
yeah, let us know if there's any questions, and we'll take questions now, Kathy.
Yeah, we don't have any here at the moment that are unanswered. So people were asking again about your book, which is Beyond Digestion. So that's a nice, easy one to remember. And so that is just fabulous. If there's anything else that you want to finish off with.
If you're interested in learning more about like some basics in gut health, I have a course I can give you a link to. I did with a health practitioner out of the United States. We've put that together, and it's like a 4-module program that really just helps give some basic fundamentals of gut health. So if people are interested in a video series.
That would be great. So actually, that's a good point. If you could go over now your contact details, and if anybody does want to get in contact with you again, and maybe just spell out that link, and so some people can look it up as well. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. And I'm working on one that's a little easier to spell. But my website is southendguelph.ca. So it's SOUTHEND, so SOUTHENDGUELPH.ca. So if you go to southendguelph.ca, you'll get my contact info on there, and my email address is there. Information about the book is there. A lot of blog posts are there that talk about things. Other podcasts that I've done are there. So talking about all sorts of things to do with gut health and how that impacts the health of the rest of your mind, your body, and your soul. So that is the best
And
place.
the link
And then
for the course that will
and
be
the
on
link,
there as well?
yeah, there's a link on the site for that as well. It's one I did with Jenny Swisher. So you'll see that it's a body literacy digital course, understanding the gut microbiome. And I think it's a 4-module course that Jenny and I did in conversation, and she had some really great questions. And we just talked a lot about gut health and, how to find a functional medicine practitioner, how to identify a good, naturopathic doctor. And sometimes those are one and the same. And then looking at the fundamentals of healing the gut and addressing gut health concerns, because it's prevalent out there. There's a lot going on, and it ties into mood and depression and anxiety and so many other things, skin issues, joint pain. It just seems to go on and on. Yeah, we get the gut in order, and the rest of the body kind of follows suit.
Thank you. Actually, one last question I will put in there is we often have situations of women who are pregnant, who have got indigestion, heartburn, typically because of just what's going on anatomically, that this growing womb is starting to squish everything, and so that's getting in the way. And on top of it, because of the progesterone hormone that's in her system, that affects all of the smooth muscle function. So then the what they call the cardiac sphincter, which of course is on top of which closes off the top of the stomach, that gets a little bit lax. So then you've got acid coming up the esophagus that way. So particularly, I would have to say, the shorter you are, the bigger the issue, the less sort of space there is in that abdomen to fit that growing womb. And, so I know there's a constant question that will come through to us, or me as a midwife, will be that the woman has got terrible indigestion going on, can hardly sleep at night. She's sitting up with 6 pillows type thing. Her doctor or her midwife has said to her, hey, it's fine to be taking, antacids. That's all fine. Don't worry about it. It's safe. And she's wondering, is it really safe? I don't know, because when you Google are antacids safe in pregnancy, it will tell you they're safe, and it will say things like no fetal abnormalities, are associated with them. But fetal anatomical abnormalities are a massive, there's but beyond a baby being born missing a leg, there's a whole, yes, okay, so it may not cause that, but surely it's going to have some sort of impact into that mother's gut health, and then that's going to impact the baby's gut health. But then she does need to get some sleep at night. So have you got some thoughts around that whole indigestion, heartburn, common minor discomfort of pregnancy, sometimes not so minor?
Right. And this can happen with and without pregnancy, but we know that there's things that particularly aggravate that esophageal sphincter, at the top of the stomach. And that typically is spicy foods, caffeine or coffee, chocolate, onions, garlic, tomatoes, peppermint. Those are kind of some of our key ones that would aggravate and would cause that sphincter to be a little more let loose, right? So avoiding some of those foods. Yes, putting a couple of pillows to help tilt so that you're sitting up a little bit on that incline. Eating smaller meals so that we're not eating so much at any given time, because obviously it's a real estate issue. So, we're eating smaller meals more frequently, and even more important to be eating more nutrient dense meals so that we can get more nutrition packed in to smaller meals. So
Right.
that can be really critical. Sometimes eating warm water or drinking warm water as opposed to really cold or really hot water, kind of more room temperature stuff. That can be helpful. Just trying to think of what else is safe in pregnancy, because there's other things that we might recommend that may not necessarily be safe in pregnancy, because we would be careful with the teas and the plant medicines. There's some that are really good, and there's some that could be harmful. So we have to be careful there. I'm just kind of scanning my brain here. So it's kind of avoiding those foods, not, eating smaller meals. Yeah, I think that's kind of, the safe things to kind of mention on a webinar. I'm always careful not to be too prescriptive in things, but those would be, key things to kind of keep under wraps.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, and thank you to those of you who came in live today to watch this. I know that we have a lot of our followers that watch things later down the track when it's at a better time for them, but we always appreciate our live audience as well. I appreciate, Laura, your time and sharing that information with everybody today. And so we will wind things up, and I just want to wish everybody a wonderful rest of their week. And thank you so much. So anything you want to conclude with it all, Laura?
I just want to thank you very much, Kathy. I find just your efforts and your passion in the whole topic of, pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, lactation, providing those very important services and helping educate people, which I find is very empowering and settling for, for a young family's mind, both in the male and the female, so that they can be, educated on some of the things that are, out there, but it brings them top of mind, and to simplify them, right? You're very, very, very good at, bringing it down to here's what's really simple here. It's doable, right? It's not rocket science.
Doable.
It's doable. Let's find it's doable. Let's, we can have all the science we want, but if we're not doing, doing the doables, it's not going to happen. So it's just recognizing and keeping it simple, and you're doing that for people and providing them things top of mind that are critically important, because, we're raising generations to come, and we have to keep that in mind as we're taking care of our bodies, our children's bodies, and our grandchildren's bodies. Those eggs are made in utero for the next generation. So
That's right, and that's something that so often doesn't really get fully understood, that we are really all the genetic makeup of our 4 grandparents. And which is why stuff skips a generation, right? Why you've got this red-headed baby and granddad is red-headed, and that's because us as women, all our eggs were formed in our body while we were inside our mother's body. All the eggs for all our lifetime were there. And for boys, their seminiferous tubules were formed in utero, inside their mother's body. And so we do. It's so fascinating. But thank you so much, and thank you for those, as I say, who are live. And we will catch you all next week. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Kathy. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you, Laura.